Me again. Hey, everybody. I think it's been, an hour and a half? Too long, in my opinion. Welcome to the show. It is the Tuesday. I don't even know what we're calling this yet. I think it's the fourth or fifth one we've done. The Tuesday interview special, where I just bring you guys that I really like, and then hopefully you like them too. This is actually going to be, I didn't plan it this way, but this is the third in our series of people who have had legal altercations with other creators. Series, I guess. Karl from Who Are These Podcasts? How are you, sir?
I am doing well, Aaron. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. I'm really excited that you said yes to this. I've been watching your stuff for a while. It was before the Opie's Gebhard stuff. I remember one of the first ones being when you guys shit on Patton Oswalt and his wife's podcast.
Oh yeah, horrible show.
It was not good. And in all fairness, I do like Patton Oswalt. I mean, I know people get hung up on his politics and shit. I just find the guy funny. I don't really care about the political part of it, really. But him doing a podcast, it shows you just because you can perform on stage doesn't mean you can broadcast.
Well, yeah, and I think that a lot of people who do podcasts, now you have a radio background, right? You used to do morning radio?
Yes.
And I think it's so frustrating for people who did radio to see that the entire landscape of podcasts are mostly celebrities who have no business broadcasting at all.
Oh, they're so bad. I was actually going to start with this today. You got your hands on way more audio than we did last week of the last Anne Heche podcast. And
yes.
As you smile about, yeah, you fucking know you did. And by the way, you had Jim Norton on. We're going to talk about the whole Opie and Anthony connection that you've seemed to make. That all of us who have been influenced by that world should be extremely jealous of. You're basically getting to live out an Opie and Anthony fan's wet dream at this point.
Yes, that is. Someone has pointed that out to me before, and it's very, very true. Like if you think about listening to Opie and Anthony every day back in 2008, 2009, 2010, if I could have thought, like, what would be the greatest case scenario that I would take over the Jocktober segment in a way that actually had Jim and Anthony contribute and be involved in.
Right.
And Dr. Steve and E-Rock. And it's really incredible, all the guys from the old O&A show that we now work with.
Well, hold on, Karl. I'm counting everyone on that list. There just seems to be one missing.
Well, he is on our show quite a bit, that Opie. Greg Opie Hughes, just could not actually have a conversation with us.
No, you're having a conversation at him.
It's funny because I've been asked many times if I wanted to have Opie on the show or would I have Opie on the show. And I don't want Opie on the show. I find him to be a bore and I don't know what I would talk to him about. I'd much rather just play clips of his show and goof on him.
I thought I had time to take a sip of water there. It turns out I didn't. That no got me. Actually, I have to say, fuck you and Who Are These Podcasts? You have officially put the death knell in my chances of getting the great Greg Opie Hughes on this show. I have my own little Opie interaction story from a few weeks ago. We've just recently started growing at a clip on YouTube of 1,000 subs a month. It's just weird how it's been going. And I decided, you know what? Fuck it. I'm a huge Opie and Anthony fan. Obviously, they've influenced. I mean, I can't help it. People have come in the chat before and they've gone, "Oh, you've got some Anthony Cumia mannerisms." I'm like, I can't fucking help it. I watched the guy for years. Whatever mannerisms there are, I came by him honestly. I can't help it.
No, I would. I would have answered that.
What?
All right.
I would have went, holy shit.
Holy shit.
But the Opie interaction, this is definitely going to fuck it. It's off the table. Opie basically put me on interview Opie probation. The fucking balls on this guy. So I reach out to him. Well, I reached out to him on Twitter, and you can't DM him unless you both follow each other. So I tagged him in something, and I said, hey, I'm putting this interview series together. And, you and Anthony, I think we were going back and forth with Gino at the time, so I didn't ask Anthony because I didn't want to, be in the middle of any kind of thing. And since that's all gotten cleaned up, but I thought, you know what, I'll reach out to Opie. And honestly, Karl, the other reason I reached out, I figure he'd be the easiest to get.
He's got the most free time for sure. Yeah,
for sure. Oh yeah. And I want to get the invite to the beach house, but. I wrote to him. He followed me back. We started DMing, and he goes, and you can do this in the Opie voice if you want to. He goes, have you ever trashed me before? You do it better than I do.
Oh, this guy's trashing me.
Yeah. So I told him, and you do this, I shit on people from time to time. You do it for a living. Sometimes you talk shit about people, and as weird as it is to say, you don't mean it. You're having fun. You're doing a show. It's some lighthearted ribbing. What you don't really think of it as, oh, this guy's going to hold a grudge, because I certainly wouldn't care if someone said something like this about me. It's all part of the business. So I honestly hadn't remembered trashing Opie. And I said, no, I don't think so. And I made the mistake because I didn't think Opie would be this autistic. I go, yeah, you can go through my shit if you want, Opie. I don't think I've trashed you. And I'm literally on the golf course with my wife, and I get a DM from Opie sending me 3 clips from my shows. And they're not, by the way, not clips that I've clipped out. Clips that he has. Oh, wow. And he goes, oh, yeah, you said this about me. And he put it in quotes. He goes, I guess I was talking about Opie and Anthony and the dynamic since, where their careers have gone. And I was kind of throwing Opie a bone. I was like, Anthony's on every day. He has a show. I go, and Opie may really suck, but at least he's got a family and shit. And Opie saw that as Opie's the only one who doesn't think he sucks. So that's why I didn't take the saying Opie sucked thing as I was insulting him. I thought everybody knew. And
also, can I just put a hold on this real quick? 'Cause I'm interested to hear the rest of this.
Yeah.
But this whole idea that he goes directly to, were you trashing me? Yeah. Now, what we do on Who Are These Podcasts is we treat it like a roast. We clown people. We make fun of them. We goof on them. It's not like I go out there and I'm like, and I think that his wife slept with so-and-so and his kids suck. We're just goofing on him because his show sucks.
Right.
We're not trashing people. I don't bring up personal things unless they bring it up on their show, and then I comment on it that way. But I hate this whole idea where you're trashing me. Yeah. I probably made a couple comments about how your show's not very good. I don't know. Is that so bad?
I mean, I could have hit harder with Opie. I never did. Yeah. I didn't care to. I always, when people ask me about Stuttering John and Opie, I know that just from doing 1 or 2 things about Stuttering John, that all the dabblers came at me and they're like, dude, that's great. That's awesome. When are you doing? And it wasn't like I'm targeting Stuttering John today. Something just came across my purview and I went, well, it's fucking hilarious. Let's shit on John. And I now have the same response to people when it comes to Opie or Stuttering John. I said, if you need that, go to Karl. Go to Who Are These Podcasts. I'm not going to be able to do a more thorough or a better job than they do. But I know I'm going too long on this Opie story.
I appreciate it.
And I've got a shitload of stuff written down here that I want to talk to you about. But the Opie thing, so he discovers these clips and sends them to me. And it's that's lowbrow trashing, man. And he goes, I don't know. You seem like you've got a good thing going for you. A good little thing going for him. He was very cunty about it. He said, it seems like you got a good little thing going for you and you've got some decent chops. I wish you the best. I'm like, thanks, Dad. And he goes, we'll revisit this in the fall. And I'm the kind of guy where I don't care how fucking big you are. You're not going to put me on the shelf and go, I'll revisit you in the fall. So the impetus for contacting you was, fuck him. I'm getting Karl on my show and I don't need Opie.
Yeah, moving on. Fine. It's fine. It didn't work out. It's all right, buddy. We're speed dating here. It's fine.
Exactly. We'll 5 minutes and you're out. So, that I took a long fucking time to say, I reached out to you and you are now the death knell in my Opie coffin. So I've basically got Jim and Anthony as the last 2 options.
Well, I would have liked to have heard you talk to Opie because I would like to hear him interviewed. He doesn't really get interviewed anywhere. I don't think it's funny because I was listening to a show recently and it's a clip that I have to pull. I haven't played it on my show yet, but someone typed in the chat about how Anthony's more successful than Opie is now.
Yeah.
And Opie was taken aback by that. He's like, you think Anthony's more successful than I am now? Okay, dude, if you say so. Like you were just saying, he's the only one who doesn't know that he sucks. Right. He's the only one who doesn't know that he's a complete failure, that he's going on Facebook Live for 3 dozen people after talking to millions of people on satellite radio for all those years.
Yeah.
And here, Anthony has his own network. Say what you will about Compound, but it's got multiple shows on it. They do video broadcasts 5 days a week. It's a pretty professional, buttoned up thing that he's doing, and he's been successful at it for, I think, 8 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just insane that Opie is the only person who doesn't understand that he's not famous. It's not going well anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, yes, again, say what you want about Compound, and I hate that we have to preface it with that, but the dude left a major broadcasting company, one of the biggest in the world, and he's been able to go on his own and do it for 8 years at an age where a lot of people in that business are looking to retire.
And I subscribe to Compound Media, so I wasn't trying to caveat it by saying, like, I don't get what they're doing over there. I like it.
Well, other people do, though. Yeah, other people do. Like, there are people certainly in comedy and podcasting who hear Compound and they go, oh, I know. No. Absolutely. And it's like, fucking grow up.
Right. Right, exactly.
So as far as the Opie thing goes, you guys do way better Opie work than we ever could, and you do way better Stuttering John stuff than we could. And I want to talk about John in a second, but I got to ask you personally, as a guy who thinks that, and I'm sure you do too, Jocktober is one of the greatest radio bits ever created. Like, to me, it's up there with Howard turning Richard and Sal loose on Tradio. Like, to me,
yes.
I mean, those are some of the funny. I've never laughed harder at radio in my life than those two things. And you are, I mean, you can be humble about it if you want, but in my opinion and many others, you're the flag bearer. Like, you're the guy currently carrying the Jocktober torch. How does that feel?
Well, I think more people would disagree with that than would agree with that.
Wow.
And I get comments all the time like, what do these assholes and these clowns think that they could do Jocktober? They certainly can't. And if you go back and listen to those old Jocktobers, they're all up on YouTube, which is great. And every now and again, like every few months, I'll go back and revisit Jocktober because I initiated the show to be like Jocktober. I think we're getting closer to it now, closer than we were when we started. But I still have to go back and get to the source material and go, that's right. These guys were so funny. You have Jim Norton in there, who's just the quickest guy ever. And Anthony Cumia, who's one of the funniest, most creatively funny people you'll ever talk to.
Yeah.
And they were bringing in Colin Quinn. And I could list all the comedians, obviously. We all know that. So, we're not at that level. I wish we were. But it is a format that is pretty easy to have fun with.
Yeah,
which is why I picked it.
The one thing I think of when I think of Jocktober, I don't know if there's a particular one you think of, but to me, the fucking Hulk Hogan Twin Towers thing or the Idaho one, those are the two of my fucking favorites.
So the Hulk Hogan thing, they would have the pests go and fuck with the show's Facebook pages. And they would, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but one of the funniest things is I remember when I'd be listening live, I'd go to their Facebook page to see what people were posting on the page. And it would be Hulk Hogan drop kicking the Twin Towers and taking them down. It's just the most offensive things you could think of. And of course, every radio show had to like delete their Facebook page.
Yeah.
Because they were getting crushed so hard.
That was the funniest part of that whole thing is just watching the shows panic because we're talking about like 2010. So 12 years ago, I was 23. I was just starting out in radio in Litchfield, Minnesota. And I had an afternoon show, so I wouldn't have to be in till like 10 or 11 Central Time. I'd listen to Opie and Anthony in the morning at home, and I'd listen to that Jocktober, and I'd almost get bummed because I'm sitting here in an AM radio station doing whatever I thought was funny at the time, which, I have tapes of it. I won't listen. But I'm listening to this shit and just almost getting depressed because I'm like, I'll never be able to pull something. Like, it's amazing. But I think it's bullshit that people give you any kind of shit for doing a Jocktober thing. Like, oh, what do you think you are, Jocktober? It's like, obviously nobody can ever do O&A's Jocktober. Like you said, look at the firepower they had in there. But a fucking good tribute band is still nice to listen to on a Saturday sometimes.
Well, I appreciate it. We definitely have taken that format and we're keeping it going. And in the world of podcasting, if Opie and Anthony had done this with podcasting, it would have blown up as well because even funnier than morning radio. Like morning radio are all kind of the same show, the shows that Sam Roberts would pick out. They had the different quirks to them, but there was the Hole who was on the show, and there was the shitty production and the imaging and all the things that they would goof on. With podcasting, there's such a huge range of formats and genres that we can dive into. So it kind of makes our show, I think they got burned out on Jocktober, and that's why they would just do it 1 month out of the year. Whereas with our show, we can do like a celebrity podcast one week, and then the next week it's some guy who's trying to podcast, has no business doing it, thinks he's great at it. So there's just a lot of variety.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing. Don't listen to these fucking people who shit on you for the Jocktober thing. I'm sure a lot of them are people either with no shows or shows with their friends that have like one viewer at a time. And they're just, I don't like this. They see guys like you or like other guys we've had on the show, like Royce from Revenge of the Sis, or we're starting to get it now on our show. You're starting to get a lot of people, like we look like the girl who's achievable and in their league, so they're mad that they haven't grabbed that same audience. And in a way, you kind of just got to look at them and go, fuck you, dude, for even thinking that what you're doing is like what I'm doing. So you got to tune that shit out, because that's honestly, I think 90% of that is other O&A fans wishing they could be doing the Jocktober show.
You're probably right. And Aaron, I don't want to tune that stuff out. I want to make sure that I recognize that there's a lot of people who don't think we're very good. I think that keeps me wanting to improve and do a better show. But I will say that ever since Anthony Cumia found us, and now we just had Jim Norton on the show, and like I was saying, E-Rock has been on the show a few times. I think that we've gotten the nod from the guys who did it before saying this is good.
Right.
And that's really all I need. So people are just like, you guys are no Opie and Anthony, you know Jocktober. I'm like, I know. But we're doing pretty well because the people who used to do that dig it and come on the show now. So.
Yeah. Once you have Anthony on your show doing a Jocktober-like thing with you, there's no matter of opinion anymore. That's literally the torch being passed. But you're right. As far as legitimate criticism, like I've always said, if you don't like what I'm doing and you think it's terrible, that's fair. I mean, I've watched shit I've done and gone, that's fucking terrible. So certainly
I'm my own biggest critic. Dude. So I record my show. Well, now we do 2 days a week, but I used to be every Saturday afternoon, I record the show. And then as soon as the show was done, I go out and do other things and just decompress. And then Sunday morning, I get up first thing in the morning and I pull the show up and I edit the show. And I go through dark, deep depression sometimes when I'm listening back and I'm like, oh, what was I doing? What was I thinking? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to clean it up? So when people say that the show sucks, it's not very good, I'm like, I know. Trust me. I know how bad my voice is. I love people tell me my voice sucks. No one has to listen to my voice more than I do. It's terrible.
Yeah, I know.
I get it.
The show is really good, man. You guys are doing a great job. And
thanks, buddy.
Also, like you cut yours up. Like we do ours live. So, and I've been this way, like even when I was doing radio and stuff, I just like it's going, if I don't feel it's going well, and then I go into the chat and someone else points out the same thing I'm secretly thinking, I'm like, yep, this fucking sucks. This is terrible. This is not any good. So, I mean, I don't know what's worse, torturing yourself with it after you've recorded it or being live in the moment. I can see both of them being different kinds of shitty.
Well, I can clean it up and post. That's the good thing. If something goes really haywire, I can just pull all of that out and pretend it never happened. But I don't do that very often. I'm not saying that my show is like completely edited. In fact, it's less and less edited nowadays than it's ever been. There's just certain things that me personally, because I goof on people for not being professional, I feel like I should probably clean up. Like, quick example. We start the show. Jim Norton came over to my house. We're recording the show. We didn't really have a chance to do a sound check or anything. So after I do my intros and we're kind of into the show, Jim's like, hey, can you turn my headphones up? So I'm fidgeting with the knobs and we're trying to find the right level. I just cut that out because no one needs to hear that. It would have been bad if it was in it. But there's too many times that I'm listening to shows and I'm listening to them fidget with knobs on the show and all this bullshit. It's not part of the show that I goof on. I'm like, well, I better clean that up because otherwise, it's the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, I just, Ball Powder in the chat goes, oh, he wants to try it. This isn't going well. Fuck you, Ball Powder. I think this is going well. It doesn't work unless I'm thinking it first, my friend.
Yeah, Aaron, I got to tell you, when we're doing the show, I do the show live in our Discord. So anyone, you don't have to subscribe or anything. Anyone can be in Discord and listen to the show live Saturdays and Wednesdays. And then I also am doing it for people who subscribe to our Patreon and Supercast on YouTube. So I have two different chat windows that I'm looking at going through in real time as I'm recording the show. And I totally know what you mean because as soon as I feel like, this isn't going as well as I wanted to, somebody reinforces that immediately. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Is there anything worse? Do you get this one? This is the one I get where I know it's not going well. The kind of the base of the neck and the back and the shoulders start to hunch up and tighten when you're listening to audio or breaking something down. And you just go, oh, fuck, I'm boring. oh shit, this is bad. Oh, the shoulders are, loosen your shoulders, asshole. That's definitely where I start to go, oh shit, this is going, I don't like this. And if I don't like it, I'm not sure it's going to be good.
Yeah, I don't know about me personally. If I tense up, I probably do. But when I start to see people make comments like boring or I'm out of here or next, I'm like, oh shit, this is really bad. If people tuned in specifically to listen to this, and we're like, yeah, this is terrible. I'm out of here.
We have one co-host. He's on Wednesdays. And as a co-host, his strategy to that is to stop the show and start raging at that person and try to beat them. And I'm like, dude, it's not going to go the way you think it will.
That's not scalable.
No.
That's the problem with that. Trying to take on every single person on the internet. I watched Stuttering John try to do it. Not scalable. Not a good idea.
So speaking of Stuttering John, the reason I say that you're 3 in our series of 3 of people who have had legal run-ins with content creators, we seem to be on this weird roll. 2 weeks ago, God bless him. Everybody's aware of him. We had Kyle from Unique Entertainment on. And to answer your question before you ask it, yes, he started drinking about halfway through. And yes, by the end of the interview, I was kind of shoving him out the door going, all right, we're good. We got it. Because he's starting to fall apart a little bit. But he's been sued by Brendan Schaub. We just had Cog from Backward Internet because I have this weird fascination with Ethan Ralph. And he's the guy who went to Portugal and his buddy beat the shit out of Ethan Ralph. They had to talk to the cops about that. You, however, are being sued by none other than Stuttering John Melendez, or there's some kind of legal wranglings or he's threatened lawsuits with Stuttering John. Where are you at with John at this point?
All right, so he did send me a cease and desist, and so that's not anything that's actually real legal issues at all. And
I've literally got all mine hanging up here in the studio. So yeah, they mean nothing.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And actually what he was telling me to cease and desist are things that I don't do, because what's happening now is that John believes anything that people will tell him. And because of that, people love telling John stuff that's not true just to see how far he'll go with it.
Oh, no.
So basically what John thinks we're doing here is trashing his children and playing his shows that are behind a paywall without any transformative content and posting his entire audiobook on our Patreon. He's accused me of all these things. Oh, he thinks that I'm getting his comedy shows canceled, calling clubs and threatening violence. God. He thinks that he was a substitute teacher at a high school. He thinks that I was in cahoots with listeners to fuck with the high school and the students in the high school. Like all these things that I don't have time for and I would never do. It's just not in my nature in any single way. They were listed in the cease and desist. So I wrote him back and I said, hey, guess what? Good news. We're on the same page. I won't be doing any of these things because I never have.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it's all good. You know, you're a public figure. You put out shows, 4 shows a week, and I'm going to cut some up and I'm going to goof on them just like a bunch of other people do now too, because it's so easily clowned. So yeah, we're going to do that a little bit. And he knows that it's obviously our right to do that. And so he has said now, because he's been threatening a lot of lawsuits.
Yeah.
This is the latest from him.
Oh boy.
He has said that he's going to be suing me and it will have criminal implications, which is not how lawsuits work.
Those are 2 different legal things, John.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sue you and charge you with sexual assault at the same time.
Well, he literally called the Rochester Police Department. I'm in Rochester, New York. He called the RPD to file a complaint about me. He thinks I'm harassing him, like I was talking about, all these different ways, which I'm not. And so I'm pretty sure they just laughed at him and said, okay, yeah, all right, John, we'll get right on that.
Jesus.
And but I think he literally thinks, he's not talking to a real attorney, obviously, or he wouldn't be saying these things. I think he literally thinks he can get me arrested, which is insane.
A little inside baseball for who are these podcast fans here. What would that attorney's name be, Karl?
The great Michael Popak. Actually, it's funny because he had this attorney that he would be on his show from time to time. And this attorney also wants fame and notoriety as his own podcast. And so they sued SiriusXM, this Michael Popak and Stuttering John Melendez. Now that failed miserably. It got tossed out by the judges. And so Michael Popak's kind of distanced himself now from John because that didn't really work out. And now John's talking about suing Patreon, which I'm pretty sure Patreon laughed in his face.
Good luck, yeah.
He's talking about suing me. He sent out cease and desist to former moderators of him, guys who used to help him run his show for free, who got fed up with him and stopped working with him, now will go on the subreddit and they'll post things. And now John's sending them cease and desist.
Oh my God.
John, this is no way to live your life, man. I don't know how you think you're going to get out of this.
God, the postage alone, John. Jesus. I mean, you guys will play clips of his show and I'll listen to those. And I'm like, there's got to be some of those Stuttering John episodes where you're like, I should just turn my mic off because I can just let this play.
Yeah. And obviously we don't ever do that because as funny as some of the John clips are, watching an actual full-on episode is tedious. And not always. There are times when John's by himself and he doesn't know what he's going to say and he's trying to be entertaining. It's hilarious, but not in the way he thinks it is.
Right.
But when he has guests on his show, because he's so dumb, he doesn't really follow politics, even though that his show is a political show. He just lets his guests filibuster the entire time. They just talk at him. And there are clips I put together, fast forwarded, 10 minutes of him just staring at the screen as his guest is just yapping away. It's like, this isn't a show, John. Have you ever watched a talk show before?
Oh my!
That's how this works. I mean, you tried to do it earlier today when you were telling your Opie story.
Yeah.
And I interrupted you. But that's just, that's not how this works. You got to let the other person talk too.
Oh, and the other thing is, while I was telling my Opie story, in the middle of it, I went, I'm taking way too fucking long to do. I'm getting mad at myself as I'm telling my Opie story. John does. I've always said about broadcasting in general, I think I allow people to get away with anything as long as there's self-awareness. Like, as long as you know what you're doing. And the thing about John, or the thing about, you pick Opie, you pick anybody. It's not even what they're doing. And you mentioned it earlier, it's when you mention it to them and they take it like it's front page breaking news.
Yeah, the level, when you're so, you have no self-awareness. I was going to say you're so unaware of yourself.
Yeah.
When you have no self-awareness, that really leads to a lot of comedy gold. And that's why we've had these recurring characters on our show. Because when I started doing Who Are These Podcasts, we would pick a different podcast every week and then we'd move on from that. And the next week we didn't mention the one from the week before and so on and so forth. And it wasn't until the Opie episode, which I think was like number 107 for us. So we were a couple of years in.
Yeah.
And we did Opie, and the response was so amazing that we're like, oh, well, let's talk about Opie some more. And we started bringing him back into other episodes, and then Stuttering John became that way. There's been a couple other people as well. And now I'm trying to work in some of these guys who just lack self-awareness in every single way. Another one that comes to mind is Sarah Silverman.
Oh, really?
Sarah Silverman used to be a funny comic. She had a good sense of herself, and she's lost it all. Yeah. She takes herself so fucking seriously. She doesn't even try to be funny on her show anymore. It's like people like that, you can't stop talking about them because you can't believe how up their own ass they are.
There is that 2016, I hate to I'm not breaking any news here, but just that whole Trump thing broke a lot of funny people. Like, it just, something inside of them broke, and the guy's been gone for 2 years, and they can't put it back together again. And you're right, that name had completely left my mind, but Sarah Silverman is a perfect example of that.
June Diane Raphael, you ever listen to How Did This Get Made?
No.
Okay, How Did This Get Made is Paul Scheer's on it. It's a comedy show that reviews movies, and I used to really enjoy it. My wife and I would sit and watch a shitty movie just to listen to their podcast afterwards talking about that movie. That was like our Saturday nights. And June Diane Raphael, another person who's just brain broke over Trump, and now everything is just ultra woke, and everything's offensive, and it's just obnoxious. You're like, how do you live your life like this? Guys, bring it back in. Let's talk about comedy again.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right, exactly. These two things can be mutually exclusive. Like, they can be separated completely. I'm drawing a blank on specifics, but I know there's just too many of them, quite frankly. Actually, you know what? I think Kimmel might be one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Kimmel's 100%. One of those.
100%.
Kimmel was my favorite late night guy, and now none of them at this point, but like, Kimmel was the one where you went, hey, all of those other guys may be corporate clones and shit like that, but you watch Kimmel, Kimmel's doing some good shit over there on ABC, and then the Trump thing happens and he starts crying about his kid, which, like, again, empathy for all that, but it's like,
sure,
he just became a bummer and he just became like everybody else.
Yeah, Stephen Colbert. I mean, you could say that about a lot of these guys that I used to really enjoy who just, they lost me. They're not even trying to be funny. They're going for the clapter instead of the laughter now. They just want to say, and Trump's an asshole. Yeah. All right.
God, it is. And it was bad. It was really cringe back then. But now when he's gone 2 years, it's like, dude, there's reaching and then there's whatever the fuck you guys are doing.
Well, that's the thing. And Ryan Long, who's been on our show before, he's brilliant. He has a video on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's so great because it points out the fact that whether your life is devoted to hating Trump or your life is devoted to loving Trump, you're kind of the same person.
Yes, I have seen that one.
The obsession with Trump on either side is weird. All right. He's not your savior and he's not the devil. He's not the next Hitler. He's not George Washington. I don't know why people have such a hard time with that. I realize he's a polarizing guy, but either side that you're on, calm down, relax. There's other things to do. Yeah.
When it comes to Ryan Long, that one is a go-to, and the woke and racist being the same person. That one is so goddamn good.
That one is so funny. They're just I'm just saying that black and white people shouldn't mix. And, the woke person's yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, too. It's well, what's going on?
The guy segregates comedy on my birthday.
Yeah, it's a great video.
Speaking of it, we're sitting here sucking other creators' dicks. Carl from Who Are These Podcasts, up pinned on the top of the chat there. We have their the YouTube channel and their Patreon. I just went back to it today, and that fucking Patreon, man, has taken off. I mean, over 5,000 and shit. The YouTube channel's pushing 12,000. I mean, be as optimistic as you want. You didn't see it getting here when you first started doing it.
No, I'll tell you what my goal was, because this was a hobby, and my buddy Kevin and me. Kevin's no longer on the show, but him and I started this podcast with the idea we'll do a Jocktober style show about podcasts. My goal, Aaron, was I wanted to get popular enough that I could be on other people's shows. I just wanted to be a guest. Oh, it's Karl from Who Are These Podcasts. I'd just be a guest on other people's shows.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to make a dime from it. I didn't expect anything. And I've been able to completely transition my profession and career into podcasting. And it's been amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, there in 2014, I kind of compare it to this. You've got your show. You've got ROTC. You had Royce and Mersh on before. We've had
I've been on their show. They've been on my show. I like those guys.
Yeah, I do too. And boy, have I caught a lot of, again, we're in this weird growth stage where people are finding us, and I'm finding out that every little small thing I say, even more so than when I was on radio, people want to cry about it. I remember one show as a throwaway. I said, "Oh yeah, I really like Mersh and Royce." You like Mersh? I'm gonna fuck it. It's oh, sorry, I don't hate the guy. I'm really sorry. But your show, those two, and then, this show's trying to grab its little Luxembourg sliver. It's almost like in 2014 when Opie and Anthony stopped. It's like the Roman Empire fell, and then these little tiny fiefdoms rose up in their place. And you occupy a big chunk of that space now.
I appreciate that. The other show that really came out of that, and part of the downfall of Opie and Anthony was the subreddit and how out of control the pests got with everything. And I think they gravitated towards Cumtown and Nick Mullen. And that was kind of the show that took over for the hardcore O&A fans. They're okay, now we like Cumtown. Yeah. And now that's our thing. But you're right. I've seen a lot of these shows kind of come out of that Opie and Anthony universe.
Right.
And I love the guys at ROTC. And it's funny because the reason why Royce and I started communicating is because he's friends with E-Rock. And E-Rock, and if anyone doesn't know, E-Rock, it was a producer on the Opie and Anthony show. He now works for Anthony Cumia at Compound. But he also works for iHeartRadio. He's been in radio his entire life. And so, just the fact that E-Rock told Royce, yeah, Karl's cool. And then, I met him down in Tampa doing a live show with Dick Masterson. And so, yeah, there's been a cool little community that's been built off of kind of the remnants of Opie and Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of grabbed their little piece of it. And
I'm actually impressed that you're into it because you're in Minnesota, right?
Yeah. I found it on YouTube, and then I got Sirius XM. I just found the clips. I think I found, God damn, man, it had to be because I started in radio. I've been in radio since I was 19, Karl.
Wow.
I started when I was 19, and that was 06. And they'd been back on Sirius for 2 years or so. And I discovered old WNEW clips. One of the first clips I found of theirs was goddamn, the guy who did Home Shopping Network. Then he did wrestling and shit for a while. Don West. Anthony's Don West selling sports memorabilia. And then I heard them doing the CBS FM bit, if you know that one, where they're making fun of the jocks on CBS FM with the pukey voice and everything. And I heard those two clips. I'm like, I got to find more of these fucking guys. This show is incredible. Like, I'd never heard a show like that. And I listened to Howard, watched him on E growing up and stuff like that. But it was like, I don't like the Howard versus O&A comparison because it's just, as much as they're in the same genre, it's not the same show. Like, I was thinking about this yesterday in getting ready for this interview. I think if you go greatest bit for greatest bit, I gotta say Opie and Anthony's best work is probably better than Howard's, and where I give it to Howard is on a consistent level, listening to them from beginning of show to end of show, what maybe has more laughs per minute, I guess you would say. I'd maybe give that to Howard, but it's close. I don't think there needs to be
which era are you talking about? The thing about Howard is Howard went through a few different eras, and in the 90s with Jackie and stuff, it was really good. Even Billy West going back a little ways.
Yeah.
But then when Artie Lang joined the show, wow. And then they went over to Sirius, and they started bringing comedians in and doing roasts, and you had Sal and Richard doing their thing. The show was so good. And then when that kind of went away and Artie went off the show and they were transitioning from that, that's when I started going, I'm going to listen to Opie and Anthony instead of Howard. I'll catch up on Howard later.
Yeah.
I used to listen to Howard going back to 95 when he came to our market every morning. And it was really, you know how it is. When you get addicted to a show, that's your show.
Yeah.
And for me to finally say, I'd rather hear what Opie and Anthony are talking about right now than what Howard's talking about. And that became my go-to after Artie left.
I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right. After Artie left, I really wasn't interested in Howard anymore. And it was also that 08, 09 period is when Opie and Anthony, when they got to leave morning radio and just focus on the satellite portion, and then you had Patrice on there more and Colin and all those guys, that show kind of was starting its second renaissance as Howard was falling apart. So it was kind of nice timing.
I agree, because what happened with Opie and Anthony, I think this is the downfall of Opie. They were the shock jock morning show that was trying to emulate Howard to some degree. They'd have the strippers in there, and they were throwing things at naked girls and doing whatever kind of antics they were up to in morning shows and shock jocks back then. And then as kind of things shifted and we have the internet and we can watch videos of that anytime we want, we don't need to listen to it on the radio, it turned into more of we got to tell jokes and we got to have comedians on who are funny and have interesting conversations and tell amazing stories. And Opie and Anthony transitioned to that very well.
Yeah, they did.
They had because of Jim Norton specifically, they had the connections with all those New York comedians, and these guys would come in and just be able to riff and be hilarious. Now, by the way, that's also ruined so many podcasts who think they can do that shit and they can't.
Yes.
98% of podcasts that want to be like the old O&A format, like, we'll just get funny guys in the room, we'll just riff. Like, no, doesn't work. It sucks.
I know. Do you I'm just like you. As soon as I hear that, I go, oh, so your show is dog shit. Like, I prep a show. I get I always say I got to get 6.5 hours of material so I can comfortably do a 4-hour show. And if I can do that, then I'm comfortable. I think, wasn't it Patrice O'Neill who said, you got to have your shit written down so that you can riff? Because if the riffing ain't working, at least you got this shit. But when I hear a bunch of guys say this, it's this phrase specifically. Yeah, we're just a bunch of friends getting together and bullshitting in our garage. I'm like, yeah, and I wouldn't listen to any of you bullshit in your garage in front of a large audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's really fun to you guys.
Right.
I have my circle of friends and my buddies that we can hang out and shoot the shit and enjoy each other, but it's not good to an audience. No one knows you guys. It's not good. There's a few people who can pull it off. I will say Shane Gillis is one of those guys. If you ever listen to his podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
Nick Mullen, as I mentioned before, is just really funny. Tim Dillon can kind of just fucking riff by himself off the top of his head for an hour and a half, and I'm captivated every second of it. But for the most part, it's few and far between people who can pull that off. And Opie and Anthony really were able to pull that off. They had the right people. And Opie, listen, I'll give him this. He did steer the ship or steer the conversation, whatever people want to give him credit for. But he wasn't a funny guy. But you had Anthony and Jim Norton there and all their friends, and it always turned into comedy.
Yeah, it's funny, as a radio guy, up until God damn, it was probably 2012, 2013. I was almost, I don't mean to say I felt sorry for him. He's a multimillionaire and reached audiences I never will. But like, as the radio guy, I felt compelled to defend Opie and what he did when other O&A fans would be like, Opie's useless. I mean, you know what? No, he's not. Because as a guy who's been in radio, that role is so fucking important. And I think the tragedy of Opie's downfall, and I think I may have heard Jim Norton say this, and this is why it's coming to me so quickly, is that Opie became jealous of the thing he never was. Like, Opie had this role that was perfect, and I could defend it. As a radio guy, I was like, yes, you need that, because when these guys start going off and trailing off, it could get boring. You bring it back, boom, fire off another segment, and then get out of the way. He got insecure about getting out of the way, and if he hadn't done that, and of course then the Times Square thing, they could still be going right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've actually grown to respect that element more as I've been running a show for so long now. And people give Sam Roberts a lot of shit on the Jim and Sam show, which is kind of taking over that slot on Sirius XM. But you listen to a guy like Sam Roberts, like you need that guy who runs the show and is able to steer that conversation and bring in the right people and pick up on the callers, you know, things that sound pretty mundane.
Right.
But honestly, when you don't have that, I listen to enough shows where everyone thinks they're the comedian and it just rambles.
Yeah. No, it really
just
does.
Spirals.
You have to have somebody, you know, it's like the old comedy formula. You have to have a straight man in there or it's terrible. And yeah, I mean, it's like he betrayed his own position, and that's kind of what helped. I feel like if he hadn't betrayed that position and everybody would have been comfortable with what they were doing, Compound might be all three of them at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what? That's actually an interesting point. I don't know that it would have been Anthony's platform per se.
But those three, yeah.
Yeah, but think about that. I was just talking to Jim Norton about this this past weekend. They just put out their podcast. The Jim and Sam show now has a podcast version once a week, and it takes elements from their morning Sirius show and puts it together. Sirius only has so many subscribers. It's a lot. It's like 30 million.
Right.
But that you only have that many people that you can talk to through that medium. Why wouldn't you want to have a podcast? It makes way more sense. I got to think you feel so much liberated by not being on the radio anymore and being able to talk to a much wider audience. Like you put up YouTube videos and people are discovering you all over the world, especially in the US because of what you're talking about. You never had that before. I talked to Eric Zane. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yes.
Long-time morning jock.
You know, what's funny, I'm sorry, but what's funny about Eric Zane, he was on Free Beer and Hot Wings, and that was the first show when we came to St. Cloud, Minnesota. They were syndicated there, and we had to take a job at the smallest rock station there was and do our talk show there. That was the first show that we leaped over in the ratings, and then that station pulled the plug on them. And then after Eric Zane left that show, he actually came on our show to talk about leaving. So yeah, it's funny that you bring Eric Zane up. That's kind of a weird crossover.
Good. You have a connection. Yeah. So Eric and I are friends now. And when we first started talking and he had just left the radio, you know, not his decision, obviously,
right.
He was really looking to get back. He wanted to get back on the radio. And I told him, I go, what are you, crazy? This is where you want to be, podcasting. The radio, you're only going to have so many listeners. Even if you have huge ratings, you're going to talk to more people on a podcast when you're successful with it. And not only that, people listen to every minute of it.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about podcasting, because in the morning drive, you know how it is. You got to say something and then repeat it again in the next hour and then repeat it again the hour after that. And then the next day you go back and you rehash it for people who missed yesterday. It's like, it's a very repetitive, and it needs to be so that everyone's on the same page of what's going on and what you guys are all talking about and the bits you're doing. With podcasting, you just say it once.
Yep.
Everyone who's listening is listening. It's not like they slept in that day. It's not like they got to work and turned off the car.
Right.
Like their whole show is being listened to, and it's so much better. In my opinion, I wasn't on the radio, but you know.
No, you're right. No, because I will tell you, I will attest to what Karl just said, and that is that now, luckily, we worked for a company that its management had no idea what the fuck was going on at their station. They didn't police anything, and it did end up biting us in the ass in the end because we did get a little cancellation there, but for making fun of some people. We Jocktobered a bit too hard, I guess you could say. But they weren't paying attention to anything. So we, being diehard O&A fans, the people who are on the show with me, we did the show the way we wanted to do it. We didn't have to do any of the kind of the hack morning radio things. And surprise, surprise, we ended up with like a 13 share, and we're at number 1 because people fucking hate that shit. But you're right. This over radio 100%. You know, people talk about, oh, you got to do like partnerships and donations on streaming. Dude, if you've ever sat through a fucking 5-minute commercial break 3 times an hour, if you're lucky, this part, like it's the only negative part of the job, but it's way better than commercials. And Karl, radio is so dog shit right now. I mean, I made dog shit money doing my actual show. I had to sell my own advertising in order to make a decent living doing morning radio. Like I had to go out and put my sales hat on after the show and go and sell my own show. And it's not.
No,
it's
by the
not.
way, getting canceled from morning radio is the best thing that you could do. Honestly, if you were still working at morning radio, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Like,
no,
I don't listen to a lot of morning radio, but sometimes we review it for the show. And for example, Dave and Chuck the Freak, who are syndicated in a lot of markets now, they came up out of Detroit.
Sounds like a great show.
Have you heard of those guys before?
I've never heard of them, no.
It's a pretty big show, and it is dog shit because they literally don't talk about anything. They are so afraid to touch any real topic that every single thing is like, hey, today's National Donut Day. What do you like on your donuts, huh? Oh, I like the chocolate sprinkles. Okay, call us up. Let us know what you think. Like, this is unlistenable bullshit, and I'm sure that they hate every minute of it, but that's what they have to do on radio now.
They still do it, and a good friend of mine who was at like the radio station that was number 2 behind us. He worked for a different company, and I was always trying to go work for that company because ours was just had no direction, no nothing. So I would always talk to him, be like, hey, get me in there. And they'd all go, we don't really want the trouble that comes with your show, like the shitting on people and because when you're in a small market, you're in a local town like St. Cloud, Minnesota, you talk shit about people, they hear it. And they get mad. And like there's like grudges in town. And like I didn't care because I went home after the show and just stayed home basically. So I didn't care if I was making enemies, but like people take that shit seriously. Now, like you said, you go on the internet now, it's liberating, it's freedom. You get to hear whatever you want to hear. You get to tune out whatever you want to tune out. Getting canceled from the radio was the best thing we ever did. The only mistake we made was because we already had Twitch, we were simulcasting on the radio, is we went to Twitch first for a couple years. And that going to YouTube should have been what we did first because the ability to reach more people is incredible.
I have to tell you, Aaron, and the algorithms have been good to you because I've been seeing you guys show up all over the place the last few months, but this year specifically, I decided to really focus on my YouTube content. I used to not have any video element at all, and I would just take some of the audio from shows and post it up on YouTube. But this year I said, okay, I'm going to get cameras in the studio. We're going to film the show, and I'm going to really focus on putting out segments of the show on YouTube. And what I discovered is YouTube is the biggest media platform in the world, bar none. It's where probably the vast majority of people go for content, just to... What's going on YouTube? They just pull up YouTube and just start flipping around and they just get fed all of this stuff based on what they like. We've had so many people find our show because they're just checking out an old Howard Stern clip or they're listening to old Jocktobers or whatever it might be that they're into. And then we show up in the algorithm because we're talking about Stuttering John. And we're Jocktobering things. And it's like that has been a huge marketing vehicle for us. And also is somewhat of a moneymaker as well, but it's really been a great marketing vehicle.
Well, yeah, you're right. I'm not even going to call it a downfall because I'm just grateful that people are seeing our stuff and the majority of them are liking it. It's always good when you find one who thinks you're the biggest piece of shit they've ever seen. But the one drawback is, and you kind of have to do it too, I'm sure, with the Stuttering John and the Opie stuff, you make fun of a particular person. And you know that if you put that one up, it's going to do well. And it kind of goes against the quote unquote artist in you where you're like, I don't think that's the funniest fucking thing I did today. I think I did way better shit, but I know this is going to do well. I want eyeballs on my product. Then they can come watch the live shows and see what we're all about. There is an element of YouTube. I'm not even going to call it a drawback, but it's like, I don't want to be the DSP guy or the Brendan Schaub guy or the Stuttering John or this and that. But I also understand the value in putting those out there because it's not your whole identity. It's more of a means to the end.
And it's funny because I think we have two separate audiences. I think we have a podcast audience and a YouTube audience. There's obviously overlap, but it's interesting to see when people who only know us from YouTube, they think that all I do is a Stuttering John review show.
Right.
And it's not true at all. We talk about John a lot, but every episode I talk about a lot of things. I always do a different podcast review every episode. It's not just focused on John, but that's the stuff that gets the most views and the most interest on YouTube. So typically, I do pull out the John material and pop it up on YouTube. And then I get accused of being a one-trick pony. And it's like, well, we have a whole show, and I listed in the description of every video. I explain this is just an excerpt from this episode. Find us wherever you get podcasts, all this stuff. But a lot of people just see the YouTube stuff and think that that's all you do.
I'll put up a really funny bit from a show we did where I'm like, this is the funniest part of the show, but it doesn't have to, it's like from a news story from like the New York Post or something. It's not like a hashtagable thing. And I'll tell the audience, I go, you know what, guy? Because some people show up in the chat and go, what is it, just DSP or Brendan Schaub? And I'll go, you know what? Fuck you. I'm putting the best thing I did today on YouTube and watch it do nothing compared to those videos. And I'll go, that's why those get clipped.
You still have to do it, though. I just don't have enough hours in the day, but eventually the other stuff will catch on and build. Probably not to the same extent as Brendan Schaub because everyone's looking for that guy.
Oh God!
But you do have to get the variety out there, and you'll find more people will find your stuff through different avenues if you put variety out there.
Yeah, and like you said, we can fall back on the fact that we do so many live streams and so many live shows, so people can come by and go, oh, they did 20 minutes of Brendan or 20 minutes of DSP in a week of 5 4-hour shows apiece. So it takes care of itself. But no,
I got a question for you, Aaron.
Fire away.
I'm kind of blown away by how much you broadcast. You do the morning show 5 days a week. You have an evening show, 4 days a week?
3 days a week, yeah.
3 days a week. And now you're doing these afternoon interview shows. Are you worried that you're maybe spreading yourself too thin? Have you thought about focusing more on just one show a day or something?
I'm exhausted on a regular basis.
Yeah. Why are you doing this to yourself?
I honestly do. This is going to be such a hokey answer. Since I was in, I think, middle school, I've just had broadcasting just in my blood. I've just loved doing it. I love the performance element of it. And as tired as I get, I just like creating shit. I just like doing a show. I like talking about news shit. I like talking about different people. I like, just the shit we do on the show. I just love it so much. And now we've added a 1 hour, because we're getting up into the good amount of hundreds of members. So now I've started to do a 1 hour members only show on Sunday nights as well. And when we got off radio, I promised my guys, because I had the choice to stay or I had the choice to leave. What happened was we got into it with some station in Iowa. We were fucking around with them, just making fun of them like we've done 100 times before. And this one had a famous friend in radio in Seattle, put us all over TikTok, clipped the shit out of it. The station got inundated with phone calls, and they said, you've got to give us your Twitch, you've got to give us your Facebook, your Twitter, everything else. And they didn't know at the time, but we'd copywritten our show because they never bought it. So we copywrote the show. And we said, no, I can't do that because, first of all, radio pays so much dog shit. We were taking the Twitch money and basically supplementing our income. I said, I can't do that. That'd wreck me. So I'm going to take this online while I still can with my, the thousands of listeners we have in a small market. And I'm going to see if we can make a go of it. And I also made a promise to my co-hosts and my guys that we had, I'm going to keep you guys employed as long as I can. So if that means I got to crank out 8 shows a week and we got to, and also this audience donates, they pay us to do the show. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to give you guys as much as I got until the fucking wheels fall off, because I think I think too many people do internet shows for donations and they take it for granted and they get mad at people when they don't. And to me, it's just like these people, when I made a serious jump off of radio and, with 3 kids and just no parachute, they picked us up. Sorry to get so gay, but they picked us up and they kept us going. And 2 years in, we're still doing it. So yeah, I mean, if that's the amount of work.
I never tell you how to do your job, Aaron, but my rule of thumb is always quality over quantity.
I hear you. And there are days where I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I have a really good one in me. But most days, most days I'm really proud of the product we're putting out there. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You read it right. It's exhausting. But again,
really I'm getting to that point now too, because we switched to 2 days a week for Who Are These Podcasts. And then I also do bonus shows for our Patreon, at least 2 a month. And then I also do the Drew and Mike show every other week. And then I also do a show called The Creep Off, and that's weekly. And then we also do bonus shows for The Creep Off, and then I do appearances like this. So I'm getting to the point now where I'm podcasting most days, and it's a lot of work. And so I know how that can creep up on you.
Yeah.
But the one thing you're doing that I agree with, and I do this as well, is changing out co-hosts. I think that changes the dynamic enough that it makes it interesting. And I didn't plan on having different co-hosts every episode, but it's turned into that, and it actually works out really well.
It does. It keeps it fresh. We started doing that on the radio, and it really worked out. Paul Palmer says, fire the guys and do 5 shows a week. Simple. Look, April and I we've crunched all the numbers. And yes, if we let everybody go, we could just do 5 morning shows a week and whatever. But again, there's that allegiance I feel to these guys who built this. And I understand we're not on radio anymore, but I told them, I go, look, is it sustainable long term? I don't know, but I'm going to keep doing it with you guys. It will always be sustainable enough with the audience we've built for April and I to do it. But I told those guys, I go, we'll ride this thing until the wheels fall off, and you guys will stick around as long as I can keep you, basically.
Well, congrats. I mean, it is a success story. There's a few people I know, like Drew and Mike, who I just mentioned, who were the #1 morning show in Detroit for decades, and then decided to just start it up again from Drew's basement, and they're killing it. They have a bigger audience than any show in Detroit just from doing a podcast. Eric Zane has been very successful coming off of the radio and just doing a podcast, and I love that you guys are doing it too. It really, anyone who's not at least putting their show out or making some type of version of it as a podcast is not understanding where things are going.
No, not at all. I mean, I would almost argue you've missed the boat saturation-wise.
Yeah, it's hard to say that. Honestly, we started in 2016, which turned out to be a good time to get started in this medium. But even at that time, there were hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there. Someone could have easily said, how are you going to break through? There's 500,000 podcasts. What do you think you're going to do?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's more now, but yeah, I know what you mean.
No, you know what? I'm going to strike that from the record immediately because that's a great point. I'll say this. There's so few good radio shows out there that I don't know what's left to come this way. Because like you said, the ones that would do it in a way that we did it, or Drew and Mike and these other people did it, the industry has cast them off. Like, they're not there anymore. And if you are doing a show like that and you're thinking you're going to go the conventional route of, I'm going to go to Boston, then I'll go to New York like O&A did or something like that. Yeah. I'm here to tell you from someone who did a #1 show for years in St. Cloud, Minnesota, that nobody could even touch it ratings-wise. Those days are dead. They're gone. They're never 100%, coming back.
Which is probably a good thing. And I mentioned some of the success stories. There's certainly guys who have tried to transition and not been successful, like Man Cow and some of the bigger names, but they needed that big radio signal behind them in order to be forced into people's cars because they just had that frequency programmed in on their radio. Yeah. It is a whole different way of building an audience when you have to do it this way.
Yep, it absolutely is. Well, Karl, I tell you what, man, this has been a lot of fun. Every bit as good as I thought you'd be, and then some. And I'm glad you took the time today to be with us. And also, again, right at the pin to the top of the chat, there are the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube and Patreon links. I strongly urge you to subscribe to both of those. There's 3 different Patreon levels, and of course, also the YouTube channel where they've got a lot of great stuff. So, Karl, thank you very much, sir. Is there anything else you want to tell people before you run off here?
Well, Aaron, I know you only had me on because you wanted to get out in front of it because you didn't want us goofing on you.
Oh, of course.
So I think that was strategically a good move on your part. I think you made a wise decision today now that we're friends.
Look, first of all,
I know you're busy, but I would love to have you come on and co-host a show with me sometime.
That is the dream invite I've been waiting for. I would absolutely do that anytime. And not only did I do this to get ahead of being trashed on Who Are These Podcasts, I'm also not comfortable and still think that if I don't keep myself as sharp as I can, I still could find myself there.
Yes, so, that's very true.
There is, in this game, there is no such thing as safety. So I will.
That's correct.
I will keep myself sharp. But yeah, if look, here's what I say. It's your show. But if you ever need someone to trash radio when you're doing a radio show or anything like this, I am still mighty bitter at that industry and love to exercise it from time to time.
Great. Yes, I do really enjoy doing that. One of our best shows ever was when we had E-Rock on, and we were talking about Todd Pettengill and what that asshole's up to. So that sounds like fun. Also, I should mention we're doing a live show in Ferndale, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. WATPlive.com is where you can get tickets at the Magic Bag, September 30th.
All right.
So that just went on sale.
My last question to you, more experienced YouTube guy. Do I take down this live one and re-upload it as a video, or do I leave it and it should be fine? How's the algorithm work for me there?
I would leave it,
Okay.
but I don't put any of the stuff that I do live. It's only unlisted for our members, so that's not my area of expertise.
All right. Well, then you know what? I'll just fuck it. We're keeping it up there. Karl, I would love to do a show with you sometime. That was going to be my grand analysis of whether or not this went well. You know, this was basically the kiss at the door at the end of the night. If I got the invite, I'll know we did okay.
You did okay, buddy. All right. We'll be in touch. We'll get that set up.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Karl.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right. Karl from Who Are These Podcasts. Thank you guys very much for joining us. You know what? Speaking of being exhausted all the time and working, I got to go get back to work. I got to book someone for next Tuesday. I'm so excited about vacation next week. I don't have another person ready. We'll work on it. I'll talk to you guys tonight at 7 p.m. And then if you can't make that, 6 o'clock Central Time tomorrow morning, Corey co-hosting the show with us. Take it easy.